Our first semifinal is set, and now it's time to move on to the other side of the bracket. We're going to have Dawido taking on Faeli, and bringing you all of the action for this quarterfinal is going to be Falcone and Derek, who are having a laugh. What is the joke?
Derek just nudging me into your shot.
I was trying to push him into the camera.
I was trying to get out of it.
How dare you?
Hey, Cora. Sorry for ruining your show.
Hi, Derek. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good.
Anyone going to say hi to me?
Hi, Falc.
I
How
don't
you
think
doing?
we've met.
I don't think we've met before. So nice to meet you. All right, what do you think of that series that we just had, Falc? Pardub versus Iroquois. Questrogue performing a lot better than Derek and I had ever predicted it would. Were you surprised?
I've been surprised by this whole tournament. Even Paladin being strong, Shadowwalk Shaman being strong, and Questrogue being strong have just been three of the many surprises. I don't think Dead Man's Hand quite made it all the way, which is a relief. But yeah, no, very fast series.
Actually, we have a surprising absence of Warrior in this top 8 and top 16 overall. We've not seen one yet today. I don't actually know if there is one across the field. We're going to have to check out this matchup right here between Dawido and Faeli. But I believe first we can go ahead and check out the bracket and see exactly what has transpired already and what we are looking forward to later on today. So, Boston 3-1 victory against Toast Monster earlier on today. He is going to be going up against Pardub, who we saw with a 3-0 sweep victory with Questrogue against fellow Czech Republic member Iroquois. And now it's Dawido taking on Faeli. And after that, we are going to see Tyler taking on Burrow. A lot on the line for Tyler, not just points, but apparently a date with a very sweet Swedish lady if he wins the entire tournament. So a lot on the line for that final quarterfinal. But first, we do have some stakes in this one as well. Faeli did very well at DreamHack Summer and unfortunately did fall a little bit short. Fury Hunter ended up winning that tournament, but Faeli beat Fury Hunter in the very first Swiss round of this event, and now he's in the quarterfinals. He does have to take down Dawido if he wants to make it to the semis, however.
Yeah, Faeli is a player who's had such a weird year because it's low-key been one of the best years that any player's had this year. It's like, I kind of think of it, it's the same as Hunter Race's tournament year, but with none of the wins. He's had a whole bunch of finals and semi-finals. Like, he got finals at Singapore, he's had finals at Oslo, semi-final, like you said, at DreamHack Summer. He's just been killing it in the tournament scene, but he can't close it out. He's always so close to making it there. And here, yet again, in a top 8 at a tour stop, he's just absolutely killing it on the tournament scene. And if he could get a victory in one of the last tour stops of the year, that would really, I think, solidify him amongst a higher percentage of the community as a tier 1 player.
Yeah, and I actually do tend to forget, but the first time we saw Faeli really was at the Wild tournament, right at the beginning of this year in March, I believe. That's the first time I met him. And while we were there, he was saying, oh yeah, but I'm competing in playoffs coming up. And he ended up doing very well in playoffs. I think a couple of times he's been top 16-ish in playoffs, and then unfortunately couldn't seal the deal there as well to make it to a championship event. So a lot of coming up just so slightly short for Faeli, but maybe this could be his chance to actually get a title under his belt. And his opponent, Dawido, a Polish player, practice partners, I believe, and good friends with A83650, who is going to the World Championships this year. So this guy's got a lot of experience under his belt as well. Good pedigree, good practice partners. Not going to be easy for Faeli to take down whatsoever. And let's go ahead and take a look at the deck list, see if that makes the picture any clearer and maybe gives us a little bit of insight into who is favored in this matchup, if anybody is. Derek, do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown on these lists?
Well, we have two surprisingly similar matchups here in terms of the archetypes being brought. 3 identical archetypes with both players bringing Even Warlock Hunter and Token Druid. Obviously, with the Even Warlock being banned away on both sides, makes sense for Dawido, especially with that for Dawido with the Odd Paladin. You really want to get rid of that Even Warlock just so you're not being defiled out of the game. The one difference that we see from these players is Dawido has the Odd Paladin, whereas Faeli has gone for the somewhat more standard in this tournament, Even Paladin.
Not a sentence I thought I'd hear someone saying, actually, that Even Paladin is once again more standard than Odd Paladin, but that has been the case.
Yeah, it absolutely has. And that doesn't mean that Odd Paladin hasn't been strong, because clearly it's been working quite well for Dawido, but Even Paladin just has been the more prevalent, more popular archetype over the course of this weekend. And I think it will be interesting to see how those two decks interact in the grand scheme of these lineups, because like you said, the other three decks are exactly the same. And usually, from what we've been seeing, that Even Paladin has fit into a bit of a slower lineup, and Odd Paladin more of a hybrid lineup that can be a little bit more aggressive. So to see those Paladin decks simply being the only difference with the three very same decks around them makes me think that, you know, maybe there is just a lot of validity and you can just switch them out willy-nilly. I don't really know, but we're going to have to find out, and we want to know what you at home think about this series. Will it be Dawido or Faeli moving on to the semifinals to play against the winner of our fourth quarterfinal? Make sure you're following in the channel. Hashtag Dawido or hashtag Faeli in the chat. Falk, you have any preferences here? What do you think?
It's a really close one. Between like my esteem for the players, Faeli, obviously he's achieved all this throughout the year. Nimsh actually told a group of us at the start of this year, yeah, watch out for Dawido, of course, being a Polish player. Nimsh is from Poland, so yeah, I'm going to go with Faeli. Sorry, Nimsh.
I'm going to go on the other side for hashtag Dawid. I have no idea why that is easier than Dawido. Apparently that's a little bit too difficult to spell. But Dawido's had a bit of a different year, I think, to Faeli. He hasn't had so much consistent, decent results. He just had a couple of peaks in his year, obviously qualifying to WESG in China, I believe, recently. And I believe he won Polish Nationals as well earlier on in the year.
Okay.
I believe you are correct.
I think I'm correct. But again, I apologize to Zeno and AA and any other Polish viewers here in the venue if I am wrong. Please call me an idiot if I am incorrect.
I'd also like to add quickly, I do prefer the Even Paladin to the Odd Paladin, and I think that's actually the tipping point for me, is why I'm picking Faeli.
I actually prefer the Odd Paladin to the Even Paladin, but I prefer Faeli playing than I do Dawido playing. But I guess I haven't really seen much of Dawido. So you know what? I'm going to go against my initial instinct, and I'm gonna give my vote to Dawido here, actually. I really like the Odd Paladin. I have been saying time and again this weekend that I don't trust the Even Paladin. I don't like it that much, and honestly, it's time to stick to my guns. So I'm going to give my vote to Dawido and say that Odd Paladin is going to reign supreme here. But then again, we've been horrendously wrong in the past, and I do expect it to happen again many, many times. But let's find out what you at home thought. Do you think that it was Dawido or Faeli who is going to take this series down? It is quite close, but favored towards Faeli. He's a player that we have seen more of recently in tournament, and he's a good player. He's a good guy. You know, he has pretty good results, but just hasn't quite been able to get there.
He's a good guy.
He's a good guy.
It's just become my goal today to just
be so mad.
Have my opinion line up with Twitch chat. So far, so good. I'm 2-0.
Falk is the man of the people here today. But we'll find out if that makes you correct or if Dawido will be moving on to the semifinals. Our third quarterfinal of the day is going to begin very shortly. Is it Dawido or Faeli moving on to the semifinals? Well, we are about to find out.
What do you think then, Derek? I don't think we've given you a chance to weigh in on this conversation yet. Odd Paladin, Even Paladin. Where do you sit?
Do you mean against each other or in general?
Just general as deck. Which do you prefer in this tournament?
Okay, in a tournament setting, I think I'm with the players in going for Even Paladin. It feels like in last year's standing, you are, I think, allowed more to bring polarized decks, because you can bring decks like Odd Warrior, which have fantastic aggro matchups, terrible matchups against some others.
Yep.
Odd Paladin feels like it's more polarized, whereas Even Paladin is more just decent against everything. But I think that's the way players this particular DreamHack are going more. They're just going for decks that are decent against everything, like Even Warlock, Even Paladin, Hunter. No amazing matchups, no terrible matchups.
Yep, that's fair. As we jump into our first matchup, it's going to be the Death Rattle Hunter for Faeli versus the Token Druid. And I think we've got to be nigh on close to 50-50 for this matchup nowadays.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm definitely warming to the good old Death Rattle Hunter on this side. Just a couple of early minions. A Grizzly and a Cube is a very tasty combination that you can get in the mid-game just to put a big wall in the way, which is just a little bit too difficult for the Token Druid to be dealing with. And when Dawido's hand is looking pretty mediocre, no early threats right now, I think Faeli will have the time to get this hand rolling and get the taunts in the way.
Both of these hands are looking a little bit slow, but for Faeli, as you said, Grizzly, Cube, and then an Activator, that's great. If that fails, he can then follow up with Katharina. Faeli's late game is looking exceptionally good. Dawido, though, he's really going to want to pick up a wild growth as soon as possible. Said every Druid player ever.
I was playing with Gallon the other day on my break, and he mulliganed away a wild growth.
What?
I know.
By accident?
No, on purpose.
What?
We were playing Gadgetzan Auctioneer Togwaggle Druid. And you wanted to find Gadgetzan Auctioneer instead.
Did he have the second wild growth?
No. No wild growth.
So
just wanted Auctioneer.
He started his mulligan with 1 wild growth.
Yeah.
And ended his mulligan with 0
wild growth. I know. It was a pretty intense play.
Struggling to compute that one.
Yeah. It was, yeah. I mean, I think he was trying to seem like Mr. Cool Guy who throws away wild growths, because that is what nerds we are. You are a cool, edgy dude if you, yeah. Oh. That viscerally upset me, I think. But still for Dawido here, as we have been nattering on over these early turns, because absolutely nothing has happened. Dawido can go for Innovate into Teacher if he wants to. But that makes the next couple of turns really rough, because what are you going to swipe on turn 3 from your opponent that you're really happy about? Like maybe they throw down a Terrascale or an Ooze on turn 3 that you can just swipe. But even then, that puts your Tyrant into your, Nourished Tyrant turn a little bit further away. So I like it from Dawido. Just slowing it down. You don't need to play too aggressively. Just get the powerful combos rolling.
Decisions for Faeli, though, who has now picked up an egg. Now, I was thinking before he might consider coining out Houndmaster Shore, but now he's got this egg. He may want to consider playing that, curving into Terrascale, but that shuts down the cube play later on. It's tricky. Just dumping out the egg and hoping Dawido destroys it, maybe, is the strategy here.
Yeah, it is a very tough play. It leaves him with no answer to a Violet Teacher that just comes down, whereas if he'd gone for Coin Shore, it would obviously have given him the ability to kill off the Violet Teacher. But then if you're going Coin Shore, that leaves you with your only play as like maybe Hunter's Mark Egg on the following turn, which isn't that bad if the Teacher comes down. Like, if Faeli could have seen Dawido's hand, maybe he would have played this a little bit differently. But again, he wants to be playing the more proactive plays, I think, which is just get your own win condition down earlier in the form of Egg.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, I think there was merit to Houndmaster Shore just to be able to fight back against both an Egg and actually a Whispering Woods. Because if to fight back against the Teacher, and if there was a Whispering Woods, he could have then just played a couple minions.
True. He's not actually able to deal with this Violet Teacher this turn, using up that Hunter's Mark now, filling out the mana curve. But wow, that's pretty awkward. And also using the Terrascale, which means if he does get that Grizzly to stick, he can't then go cube Terrascale Stalker. He's just going a much more aggressive route than that.
I think developing minions at the moment is probably more valuable than the potential of maybe going Grizzly into cube Terrascale later on. Like, there's a pretty expensive combo to get rolling, but I agree, it's definitely something to consider, because if you can get down a Grizzly and cube plus Death Rattle Activator it, you have won the game.
You just win. Yeah.
You just win.
What to do?
Now Dawido needs to work out if it's Nourish turn or if it's somehow make the most of Violet Teacher turn. But I don't even know what make the most out of Violet Teacher means this turn. There's not that many tools to synergize with her.
Yeah, with a Power of the Wild, we could have a much nicer looking turn with like Innovate, Soul of the Forest, Power of the Wild, or Teacher.
Drawing.
Innovate, Power of the World. But yeah, I think on this turn, you have to go for the Nourish, and I love the drawing option instead. I just find more and more often with this deck, you just want to draw.
You love to draw with Nourish, don't you, Darren?
That's me. If I even see someone reaching for mana crystals, I am physically sick.
Second cube picked up by Faeli. Not really looking that helpful, again, with no activators.
Weird turn now for Faeli, where the Mossy Horror is pretty good on this turn of just giving him a big swing on board. But the upside of keeping it for later on, I think he correctly realizes is too valuable.
Right.
You kind of have to save that for the Spreading Plague that will come down later on, or you're just going to be dying to a board you can't deal with.
Yeah, Mossy Horror is even better when you've got several eggs that have been spat out of this cube.
Good point, good point.
It's better on both ends. Better against the opponent, better for developing his own board.
Were you watching Tespa last night?
I wasn't.
Because there was this insane game. It was so funny where one of the teams completely messed up. They were going for this exact kind of play where they tried to fill their board with eggs and then play Mossy Horror. And so they went cube into like double or triple activator, and they had literally 7 eggs on their board after their opponent killed off their cube. And they couldn't play the Mossy Horror. They literally couldn't do anything for the rest of the game because they couldn't kill off their own eggs.
I have had a game where an opponent of mine has done that in battle ranks at ladder.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it in a tournament.
It was absolutely hysterical. Obviously, I don't expect Faeli to be doing that, even if he could. And here it is, the Plague #1 coming down for Dawido. And for Faeli, because there isn't even a Soul of the Forest put in with it, now all of a sudden this Mossy Horror looks very tempting indeed. But not actually 100% necessary,
No.
I would argue.
I'd argue it'd be preemptive.
At a second glance, yeah. Like, it's obviously fantastic on this board.
Never mind. Faeli has decided it's worth it to push 14 damage straight to the dome. Next turn, he can coin out Katharina. Both Grizzlies have been drawn. Is Faeli running Charged Devilsaur? I'm just checking. No, he's running Dread.
Swamp King Dread, that's pretty sick.
So he plays Katharina, and it gets either King Crush or Swamp King Dread.
Yeah.
Seems good.
And I think actually looking at this again from Faeli, while this does seem preemptive, if he is met with the second Spreading Plague, which is the only real punish, I think, to this play he's going for here, it's not that bad because Dawido didn't go for mana with the Nourish. He can't go Plague, Innovate, Soul of the Forest, which is the only real punish that Faeli needs to be afraid of. If he's met with just a... with just the Spreading Plague, he just trades. He just kills off all the Scarabs on the board and carries on his merry way with Coin Katharina.
Time waits for no one.
He could. Okay, so we can Hero Power down. Yeah, he's going to Hero Power down, Innovate out the Spreading Plague. There we go. Because if the previous board was considered wide enough for him to warrant Spreading Plaguing, my goodness, then this board is definitely wide enough.
Yeah, Dawido kind of forced into this play here. He really doesn't want to use the Plague. But again, I think he sees this as his last vestige of hope.
And he's seen Mossy Horror now, so at least that threat is out of the way.
I learned a good word while watching the... which I'm sure I'm going to use incorrectly while watching the chess championships over the weekend.
What word's that then?
Which is Zugzwang. Zugzwang, a German word. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong as well.
Zugzwang?
Zugzwang or Zugzwam.
Gugzwang?
Zugzwam. It sounds like Zerg Swarm is the way I remembered it. And I think it means you're forced into a play. And here Dawido really doesn't want to go for the Spreading Plague because that is his win condition. Going Plague into Soul of the Forest later on is how he wins this game. But he has to use it here. He has to make this play or it's just game over.
To me, Derek, it is looking like it's game over anyway. I don't think Dawido can actually protect himself from this lethal.
What to do?
He is thoroughly Zumzwonged into pressing the concede button.
Zumzwong?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Ah.
Zagzwing.
Ah.
I wonder.
Is there anything he spotted to survive here? He can't even gain armor to upgrade that Spellstone.
This is the exact kind of situation we saw Ball control in. I can't remember if it was in his round 8 match or in the top 16. I think it might have been in the top 16 up against Boston, where he was trying to delay playing the Spreading Plague for as long as he possibly could. He was armoring up with Branching Paths, pressing the Malfurion armor button as long as he could to save the Plague to go in combination with Soul of the Forest. But Dawido didn't even have those options available to him. No armor to be gained with Malfurion or Branching Paths, and therefore, after both Plagues have been utilized, that is game over, which is a big win for Faeli with his very aggressive style of play there. Not worrying all too much about, what his opponent could have later on down the line. Not playing too fancy, playing the egg, playing the Mossy, getting damage on the board, and killing Dawido as quick as he could. Worked out beautifully.
And now it's time to let those counter picks begin. It's last hero standing. So I fully expect to see Dawido switch to Odd Paladin as, it's that or the mirror. Odd Paladin, clearly the favorite choice though.
Yeah, this is a really nice counter pick for Dawido, which most players don't have access to, because I agree, Odd Paladin against Death Rattle Hunter is probably Death Rattle Hunter's worst matchup.
Yep.
It just can't fight back against all the 1/1s. Level Up comes down turn 5, Fungalmancer comes down, Purifies Maul, Raid Leader, whatever. It just kills you before you can do anything. Whereas most players have opted for the Even Paladin, which I would argue is a decidedly less strong counter to the Death Rattle Hunter.
Yep.
So definitely working in Dawido's favor here with the option to go Odd Paladin.
Okay, well, Faeli got the candle shot. That is good against Odd Paladin. It starts dealing with his 1/1s immediately. Having to throw away the big things.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Dawido, I feel like as an Odd Paladin player, I maybe keep the Corridor Creeper too much because it is so good in some matchups that I kind of overestimate how good it is going to be in others.
Right.
But love the keep of Maul because Divine Shield would pretty much win him the game on the spot. +1 attack and +1/+1 are fine. And obviously 25% of the time you're very sad to be getting the taunt. But he worked out okay here. With the Champion's Maul, he can just keep going really wide on the board to set up for that Fungalmancer.
Firefly also a very nice counter to the candle shot. And then it's a 1-mana 1/2. Faeli's going to have to put several hits in order to kill one of them. Maybe Dawido even considers coining out the Flame Elemental because of that candle shot.
I think I like playing it a little bit slower, actually. I can see the benefit for Divine Favor, but cards isn't really what he needs here. He just needs to be making the strongest tempo plays as quick as possible. And coin Fungalmancer, I think, is probably a slightly better way to go about that. But I agree, if Faeli ends up with a hand like this, which will have a lot of stranded cards knocking about, the Divine Favor could end up being pretty nice as a one last refill.
Not even going to waste that candle shot on the Firefly, though. Going to just use it to pick off 1/1s, I suppose. Going to have plenty of chances to do that as well over the next few turns.
Faeli here not even falling into the trap of hero powering, candle shotting down the Firefly because he realizes the vast majority of the time the play on turn 2 is 1/1.
Yep.
Just the hero powers coming down, and he would much rather kill off Silverhand recruits than he would Fireflies because of that level up. I think this is a really nice hold back from him, a nice reserved play.
Of course, there was a potential punish, though. If Dawido's play was the Flame Elemental and a Blessing of Might, for example,
very good point.
Then not hitting the Firefly could have ended up being a disaster. It's very difficult to balance.
Dawido in the end here going with the Stonehill Defender instead, which obviously is influenced by the candle shot. I think if that wasn't there, this would be a very easy snap hero power.
Yep.
Because coin into Stonehill Defender is really not that strong. He's, in terms of tempo, played a Silverback Patriarch for the moment.
Sunkeeper Tarim, however, is very strong.
Yeah. Every single time you snap pick that card, it's why you play Stonehill in the deck.
Yeah.
If Tarim wasn't a card, you wouldn't even dream of playing Stonehill. That's how good Tarim is. You will play what is a pretty mediocre card for what the deck is trying to do, just for like the 25% to hit Tarim.
Dawido hasn't actually used his hero power once yet this game.
It's kind of what Divine Favor games allow you to do.
Yep.
Especially because, he's got the Stonehill Defender as well, just to keep that damage, keep that value rolling. He's just got stuff to do for days and days. Like, he can go 1-drop Raid Leader next turn, Fungalmancer next turn.
But then he's running Baku for no reason. That could just be a better card in his hand.
Fair point. So instead of playing Odd Paladin, your idea is to play High Roll Paladin, where you draw the perfect curve every single game.
Yep.
So that you can play Divine Favor.
Yep.
I love it.
Take out Baku, put in a single Imani Berserker. There you go.
That is poor deck building to rival even Raven's Twitter posts, I would say.
Oh, didn't realize I'd gone that far.
Let me think.
I was joking with you there, Raven, by the way, not at you. As this looks a little bit less enticing now for Dawido with the fact that Raid Leader means overkill has to be used in order to take out the 3-3. So instead, he's just going nice and wide on the board here. And I think I can respect this. You know, you want to be going wide before turn 6, which is when Mossy and Rexar can come down, and just having the most amount of stuff on board as he possibly can to set up for the Fungalmancer is very important.
Yep, it's going to be very difficult for Faeli to do anything about that Fungalmancer. Again, going into turn 5, this is the difficult turn. The turn where Hunters can't deal with anything. No Mossy Horror, no Rexar available. He can Candle Shot 1 minion down, Flanking Strike another, but that's it. That leaves 2 minions on the board.
And this is I think, surprisingly tough play from Faeli in going for the tracking here instead of the cube, because if he just plays cube onto the board, he can kill off one of the Silverhand recruits, which means level up is basically not a play. You'd never do it on one Silverhand recruit there. Fungalmancer trades very unfavorably into his cube because he can only buff up the Firefly and the Flame Elemental to 4 health. So it stats very, very nicely there. Whereas by going for the Flanking Strike, he can kill off a couple of the guys, but the Wolf gets value traded by the either the Firefly or the Flame Elemental. But because Faeli has exactly cube plus play dead, he had the possibility to find the Witchwood Grizzly, but he doesn't even pick it.
Goes for the anti-Vine Cleaver card. But yeah, this hand with Witchwood Grizzly would be looking stellar, wouldn't it?
It's insane. If that sticks on the board, you just win the game, but that is a big if.
Well, it seems like a good time to mention that when Dawido played that Stonehill Defender, he snap-picked that Tarim instantly. He didn't hesitate. So I wouldn't be surprised if Faeli just has the read.
Very good point.
There's merit to slowing down in situations like that, even when the pick is that obvious.
And I guess to bring this one step further in the conversation of whether to go cube or tracking there, he does still have 1 charge left with the Candle Shot, again, because of his very conscious decision to not start attacking into the Firefly on turn 1, which means he can pick off the 1 health left on the Flame Elemental now. So he still has the ability to fight back on the board. It just about works out here going for the Flanking Strike instead. But still, I think it was quite close.
Let me
The problem with Faeli picking that Ooze, though, now is that he doesn't really have anything to play next turn, unless he now just jams the cube on the board, the play you wanted to see last turn. It's looking like his only option. Never mind. That's a good draw.
So it's going to go down to a 6-6, which means, you know, I'm doing quotation marks here, it survives. Obviously, we can see there are plethora of ways to deal with the Witchwood Grizzly, but that's still a pretty nice draw. It's just so unfortunate for Faeli that he can't guarantee it to survive.
Yeah.
And I guess this is why he didn't pick it off the tracking, because this exact situation would pretty much have happened. He just plays it as a medium-sized minion, and it dies, and he can't cube it.
As you said, plenty of ways to deal with this, though. I wonder which one Dawido wants to go with. Blessing of Might helps out, too. Buffing up that Fungalmancer, getting the straight trade there, and then being able to smack the hero power button. Setting up for a potential level up. Setting up for, again, Tarim by putting more 1/1s on the board. This seems very strong. Faeli wants to see Rexar immediately.
But even then, Dawido's made himself quite resilient to Deathstalker Rexar. Like, it's not that good here. After the Rexar comes down, Dawido could quite happily load up onto the board in a pretty major fashion. And there it is, a fairly sad cube finally has to come down. I would be interested to see how it had shaped out if he'd gone with the cube first. Maybe there was just a strong punish that I'm not even considering. Interestingly, with the Void Ripper, which has now been found for Dawido, he will, I imagine, be wanting to save that for Grizzly that can be found, maybe, to...
Never mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's game over. But I think he was maybe trying to save it for the Grizzly. He obviously didn't know that Faeli had discarded the second one off of tracking already. But either way, Dawido does what Odd Paladin is supposed to do in beating the Death Rattle Hunter. That is a very difficult matchup for the Hunter to win.
Which ties up the series and now puts Faeli in the position where he has to find the counter to Odd Paladin. Token Druid does seem like a good pick here. I did ask you earlier which you prefer between Odd Paladin and Even Paladin generally. Now let's bring that question down. In that matchup, which deck is favored?
I would definitely rather have the Even Paladin than the Odd Paladin up against Token Druid.
No, sorry, against each other. Like Odd Paladin versus Even Paladin.
What? I don't understand the question. Does Token Druid factor into what you're talking about?
Not at all.
Oh, okay, sorry. I completely misunderstood.
So Odd Paladin versus Even Paladin, which deck do you think is favored? Because Faeli now has to choose.
Sorry. Sorry. I do understand. I think it's closer than you would think, because I want to say Odd Paladin because it just goes too wide on the board.
Yep.
And the Even Paladin can really struggle to keep up with that effectively because it doesn't have Call to Arms anymore, which was really the cornerstone of that strategy back in the days. You would get a Knife Juggler out onto the board, you'd get ahead, and once you're ahead, Odd Paladin really struggles to come back. Now, obviously, it comes in the form of Wild Pyramids, a Consecration, trying to go for those wide board clear plays, whilst also tempoing and curving out your minions as much as possible.
Yep.
But I do still agree with Mr. Faeli here in going for the Token Druid instead. You've got the classically good Odd Paladin cards in the form of Plague and Swipe, primarily.
None will survive.
As well as a couple of other nice tools, just like Whispering Woods onto the board. That's a lot of stats that the Odd Paladin has to be able to fight through and could just clear off a bunch of their 1/1s.
Ultimately, though, Faeli is going to want to be winning games with this Token Druid. It's quite important because he doesn't want to end up with Even Paladin versus Dawido's remaining deck, which will be the Death Rattle Hunter after this one.
Yeah.
That matchup isn't looking quite as good.
Let me think.
Reporting for duty.
Dawido's starting hands here a lot easier than the first couple of games, where I think he can just start hero powering now. Like there's obviously the consideration to just go super aggressive and play out your 1-drops, but that doesn't actually put any more attack on the board right now. It leaves you more resilient to swipe, obviously, would be the main consideration. But I think if you're facing down the kind of hand that has Swipe and Spreading Plague in it, there's very little that you can do to win, no matter what. So let's just curve out. Against the usual hand, you just want to be playing Hero Power. Oof.
Well, this hand is looking like a good counter to a white board, isn't it? Wild Growth onto...
Oh yes, my friend. This hand is insane.
Spreading Plagues available very soon. Gonna have to take a little bit of damage in the meantime, but it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, Void Ripper or level up kind of has to come down right now for Dawido. And Divine Favor picked up off the top, and you know, if he'd known, he could have started throwing down his 1-drops a little bit more aggressively to make his board more resilient to the swipe. But
he could do it this turn. He could just not Hero Power, go Firefly, Flame Elemental, and Argent Protector.
Oh, this is just the biggest Pray They Don't Have Spreading Plague hand like I've ever seen. Because you don't want to do this against Druid. Like, you want to play Raid Leader to start hitting them. You want to play Blessing of Might, obviously, with a Divine Shielded minion. And this is just not that. It's really going to struggle to get the job done.
Faeli even being given Whispering Woods. This turn was looking pretty weak. But now he's just got this card that he can play if he wants to. He could just Hero Power down a 1/1, but playing his own board full of 1/1s, for me, I would find that tempting.
Dawido knows exactly what is up right here. Faeli going for the coin into Spreading Plague play. It goes into, he's doing it coming from his opponent's turn 4, which means there's no level up possibility.
There's no answer.
Dawido just doing everything he can, trying to find the Void Ripper or the level up, but it's just not going to get the job done here, I don't think, unless he finds exactly Void Ripper. And I do like this from Faeli because you know, why give your opponent the possibility to trade in with Whispering Woods? They're just getting value from their stuff that they otherwise wouldn't have, because you do need stuff to do against Odd Paladin into the late game. This hand for Dawido, while it may just lose immediately to Spreading Plague, if it doesn't, if he finds the answer, he can extend this quite far into the late game, I think.
It's something that Odd Paladin is just surprisingly good at doing. It's just not losing at the first hurdle. They just have enough resources to come back again and again and again. Even with the Divine Favor gone, it's not a bad hand, and more importantly, it's a great hero power. That's not a Void Ripper, though.
Yeah, obviously Dawido playing two of them in the deck. In his strategy where he's clearly going for a Warlock ban, it would seem. I think that's what he's banned every time we've seen him on stream. You know, you need the double Ripper to be able to deal with the Druid. And I think you can clear off maximum 2, maybe 3 minions with the way the trade works out, and man, is that not a winning play.
So I suppose he just has to play Fungal Mancer and just, or Raid Leader, sure. Trade everything in, summon more dudes.
Yeah, 3 minions killed this way, and you get a hero power thrown in as well. So maybe if he gets Void Ripper or the level up Fungal Mancer off the top, I'm not even entirely sure he can start to pull this back. How Faeli, like, absolutely capitalizes on this advantage is a little bit more complicated. It probably just comes in the form of Soul of the Forest, but that weakens the power of his second Spreading Plague if that's needed to be played. Probably still just worth it. If he thinks he's won the board irreparably, we could see Plague, Tyrant, Floopy Tyrant.
Oh, that would be a strong
like
turn, wouldn't it?
Lethal next turn with Savage Roar. But maybe that's opening himself up to the possibility of, I was going to say Void Ripper, but if you go for that play, you can also kill off 2 of these minions.
Yeah, I'm struggling to find reasons for Faeli not to go ahead and do that. I think he has won the board irreparably, as you put it.
Yeah.
And Dawido's used up his Divine Favor already, so it's not like he's going to suddenly fill his hand full of resources.
Yeah. In my mind, I was running through all the potential punishes that could come down, but Tyrant isn't, Vine Cleaver isn't available right now. There's obviously no Void Ripper plays when you have no minions on the board. I think this is just pretty much it for Faeli. It's a smart play, because I think like I said, the one maybe small punish that he can fall into is if he plays Soul of the Forest and his board is full of 2/2s instead of summoning a bunch of taunts with the second Spreading Plague. Whereas this, like, is this just lethal, I think? I mean, if it's not, it may as well be.
26, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, it may as well be
exactly,
lethal.
Yeah. You can clear off minions if wanted to. The Soul of the Forest comes down now, and this board is super irreparably gained for Faeli as he just continues to get the damage through to the face. Hero power level up is Dawido's last way of setting up any kind of defensive possibilities at all, but I get the feeling that his best chance here, or, you know, not best chance, but the world he has to live in is either concede because the game is clearly lost, or pray that there's no damage buff and he plays Divine Cleaver, setting up for swing, hero power, level up on the next turn.
But any of these Scarabs that get killed actually get buffed because they go from being 1 attack to 2 attack, and then Savage Roar is by far enough damage for Faeli to end the game at this point. Takes the 2-1 lead, leaving Dawido with just Death Rattle Hunter remaining.
And this has just been a very last hero standing-y style of series where you have the first matchup being very important in the way the queue works out, and it just goes counter matchup from here on in so far. And it has been strong counters. Odd Paladin versus Death Rattle Hunter, Token Druid versus the Odd Paladin on the response. The onus is definitely on Dawido to pull something out of the hat now, because Hunter up against Token Druid and even Paladin, even if those were favorable matchups for the Hunter, which I wouldn't call either of them that favorable, you're never that favored when you are down 2-1 in the series.
No, that is true. But another way of looking at it is that neither of these are matchups that the Hunter necessarily loses. They're not necessarily favored matchups, but they're also not that unfavored. And it's certainly possible for Dawido to still win this series.
Glass 50% full kind of guy.
I wouldn't say 50%. That's
it's like a 35% full glass of water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost half full. Yeah.
It's like, have you noticed, when you're in America and you try and like pour a glass of water, the taps are all like, they make like so much froth at the top. Like when you pour them, it comes out like so much squirted that when you actually turn off the tap, you only have like a quarter of a glass of water at the end. I like a good English tap where, you know, you turn it on and 10 minutes later and a good squirt of rust coming out the faucet. You've got a nice big glass of chalky water.
Bon appetit. So will this be a repeat of the game that we saw earlier where the Death Rattle Hunter was able to just overwhelm the Druid? It's the other style of Token Druid. Interesting. Most of the Token Druids have been Violet Teacher build
They
in this
have.
tournament. Obviously, since Giggling Inventor was nerfed, Strong Shell Scavenger isn't quite as effective, but Tar Creepers and Sarah Knights here.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to whether that will hurt or help this matchup, because there's obvious benefits to the Violet Teacher if it sticks. But there are a fair few punishes in terms of Violet Teacher being thrown down onto the board. You could just see Spider Bomb or Hunter's Mark coming down to kill it off. Whereas this one is a little bit more mid-rangey. It's got less high roll potential, I suppose you could say, with the Violet Teacher going out of there. But it's just going to curve it. This is just curve Druid.
Yeah, there's not actually a Strong Shell Scavenger present in this deck. It's made the cut, so it's not the...
Very interesting.
I'd usually call it Strong Shell Scavenger Token Druid, but it's not. It's more just Tar Creeper Sarah Knight Token Druid.
But in this instance, I am very hesitant to say if just curving out is good enough, because, you know, if the Hunter was also just curving out, I would say the Druid probably comes out ahead because it has buff cards, it has Soul of the Forest that can help it pull out ahead. But when Dawido has potential combos that we could maybe be looking at, like Grizzly into Cube Playdead if he finds a Playdead to go along with this hand, the Hunter pulls so far ahead. So the Druid, I feel, really has to get something going a little bit sooner.
Dawido scanning through his hands. Like, can I play one of these cards? Nope. All right, Stereo Power. Yeah, Curve Druid, as you said. Not even going to consider cleaning out the Nourish there and playing the Tyrant alongside it. This is just a powerful
Curving
turn
out. Yeah, I like it, because next tournament we can see Nourish plus Tyrant as well, leading up into Coin UI in the next couple of turns.
Oh boy.
Maybe this is just good enough from the Druid. I mean, there have been, in all seriousness, other Druid decks realizing the power of just playing well-statted minions in Druid.
Yeah.
Like the people putting Injured Blade Master in the decks with Oaken Summons, because you realize, you know, in a Malagos Druid or a Togwaggle Druid, you don't have to play no minions and rely entirely on drawing and gaining armor. It's obviously very strong, but just getting out minions on curve is very powerful and a strong stalling mechanism to get you to your win condition.
Yeah, I mean, Spiteful Summoner Druid was strong for a long time, and a lot of that was down to the strength of Spiteful Summoner, but the deck was strong even before the Summoner got played.
It was a good deck.
Quickly.
Interesting turn again here for Dawido, whereby playing the Witchwood Grizzly, I think, allows it to survive on board. And that is going to be what he goes for, because the Ziliax, you know, rushing into a Tyrant isn't necessarily that strong, because I would say there's a respectable chance that he just goes Mossy Horror next turn to deal with these couple of Tyrants, so you don't want to rush in a Ziliax to do what the Mossy Horror might do next turn anyway.
So, Faeli would like to clear this Witchwood Grizzly if possible, because we established in the last game, Cube, Playdead on a Witchwood Grizzly just ends the game for Token Druid outright. So how's he go about doing that? He's going to just, ramp up, trade Hero Power. I was wondering if there would be a consideration of playing Soul of the Forest before trading these minions. The problem with that is that it's very weak to Deathstalker Rexar, which could also come down next turn.
I mean, I was wondering if there was a consideration for Wild Growth, but I absolutely agree.
Instead of clearing the Grizzly?
Yes, instead of playing the hero power. I definitely think this is the correct play from Faeli. But it shows how afraid he is of the exact combo of Cube Play Dead. Because if he does leave up the Grizzly, again, the game is over if those 2 cards are in hand for Dawido. So he is giving up a next turn Ultimate Infestation. A turn 6 UI could have been played for Faeli, but he gives up that opportunity just in order to kill the Grizzly and thus misses out on the Wild Group. This is a very big concession in terms of card advantage and tempo, but that's how important it is to get rid of it.
Well, Faeli can continue to curve out if he wants to. Now with the Scenarios pickup. And it's not bad. Coining out Scenarios, playing the Treants.
What to do?
Dawido plays Rexar. Well, he plays Hunter's Mark, Rexar clears it. It's not great either.
Oh, playing this Scenarios is just, it feels so bad because you want to go coin UI, but everything else is so rubbish. Do you just give up on tempo for a turn completely by playing the Wild Growth? He is continuing with his game plan here, which is just staying ahead on board. Keep curving out, because next turn, it means he has a very strong turn this turn, which he wouldn't have had if he'd gone for the slower play of just going Wild Growth, and he gets Soul of the Forest next turn.
But like I said, it does get punished by this. Faeli's game plan of put everything he can onto the board is over. He only has 9 mana this turn because of that coin out play, and he has nothing to do with his mana.
I believe this is what the kids would call a big oof.
If you thought last turn was bad without the Scenarios. Wow.
Yikes. Absolutely miserable there for Faeli. And now Dawido, as I think he can make the very strong read that his opponent has Ultimate Infestation in hand. Very strong read. His opponent just went for Nourish with mana with very few cards in hand.
Yep.
You never do that in Token Druid unless they have UI in hand.
Yep.
Dawido will have that read, which means he can play around 5 damage exactly. This Witchwood Grizzly is going to be 8 health, I believe, with the 4 minions in Faeli's hand.
Yep.
We could see him slam the Witchwood Grizzly on this turn. Very likely it survives until the next turn, and then he's got a tracking to try and find himself either Terrascale Stalker or Play Dead into Cube plus Death Rattle Activator next turn. I think that's just a really powerful turn here for Dawido to set up for his most powerful combo in this matchup.
That is insane, yeah. No harm in pressing the hero power button first. He can still do this and then play Witchwood Grizzly. He may get something even more powerful that he'd like to cube Play Dead the following turn.
Ooh.
Okay.
Doesn't find the Death Rattle Activator, but Katharina is perfectly good enough. And Dawido, he knows exactly what's up. He's setting up for that giant wall of bear to stop the Wispies coming in.
Yeah, this works out very nicely.
And again, Faeli thinking, is there any way I can kill this? If Faeli is running an Innovate in this deck, which he's not, then he could have potentially been able to go UI Innovate Spellstone. It's not even a possibility anymore. And we have seen some of the players, I believe, Ball Control's running an Innovate in his Token Druid, and perhaps a couple of other players as well.
A lot of them are, actually. Dawido was running it in his Token Druid that we saw earlier on the series.
Right, you are.
It's been in Mali Druids, Token Druids, and Togwaggle Druids throughout the weekend.
Maybe it's just good.
Maybe. Yeah.
But Faeli, there's nothing else really going on. Even if, I didn't even count up, even if he did have the possibility to kill it off with, Hero Power, Savage War, and Branching Paths.
Such a bad play.
You're not winning that game anyway, so you just pray that they don't have the Death Rattle Activator. And Dawido does not.
Dawido does have Charged Devil Saw and King Crush in his deck, though, which means Katharina is looking like a pretty good drop here. Can even equip the Candle Shot to finish off the Arcane Tyrant after trading his Boar into it, as Witchwood Grizzly rather into it, if that's how this turn goes down.
Yeah, the Katharina is the play here. Like, I was looking at lines where he could have gone for just cubing the Grizzly right now, because this is, I believe, his last Grizzly, isn't he? He played the one earlier that Faeli killed off with the hero power. And this is the minion that you want to go cube play dead on, because it just kind of shuts the Druid out of the game. But by going for the Katharina here, this King Crush very likely survives, and then, a wall full of taunts is good, but dealing 24 damage to your opponent in one turn with cubing the Crush and then getting it out of the cube once again, that's probably even better.
And who knows, there are other minions that he can get from, Dawido can get from his hero power that may even just end the game if cube play deaded. I don't think you can get Witchwood Grizzly from the Hunter hero power, at least I've never seen it. I think there is the odd beast missing from the pool.
That's a good point, actually.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
I don't think I ever have as well, but you have to be able to. It must be in there, right?
Does it have too much card text? Maybe it wasn't added into the... Because I know that there's been some complications with the Rexar hero power in the past.
I mean, it has to be in there, right? But yeah.
It should be.
Like you say. But what have we got here? This is now 14 damage that can go directly to the face. That brings down to 17. I think that's actually just exact lethal with the candle shot coming in as well. After cube into Terrascale Stalker can close things out on the King Crush. And I think Dawido has triple checked his maths here. Bringing this game back up to 2 games apiece.
Yeah, we're going all the way to game 5. It's going to be that even Paladin versus the Death Rattle Hunter. Oof. That really could go either way. This series is a nail-biter. As Dawido raises his hand, probably going to go for a bathroom break.
I would imagine so. And now Faeli with the old Token Druid knocked out the way. The even Paladin, the thing that I found in this matchup with the even Paladin up against the Death Rattle Hunter, as I put my non-brand beverage onto the floor, is that it's really weak to the removal from Hunter. I often find that Odd Paladin is incredibly resilient to the vast majority of removal spells that Death Rattle Hunter has. It's only really the Mossy Horror and Deathstalker Rexar that Odd Paladin is weak to, whereas even Paladin, it's weak to the Candle Shot, Spider Bombs can be really bad, Flanking Strike, as well as just Rexar and Mossy Horror are also pretty good in that matchup. The Hunter's Mark as well. There's just a lot that the Hunter can do to really shut down the buff cards, the combinations that even Paladin has to get rolling for it to seem like a powerful deck.
Yeah, they're 2 decks that do very similar things, sort of, but the Rexar deck, the Death Rattle Hunter deck, does just seem to be more powerful, more explosive than the Paladin, which Paladin is very fair. You play a minion at a time and then run out of cards eventually. Yeah. Maybe the Paladin can get Valenier going, but otherwise it doesn't really do anything that's extremely strong.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the power level of even Paladin is just not that high, which is what's holding it back. If it got a couple of extra cards in the new expansion from Rastakhan's Rumble, maybe there's a couple of... And I'm trying to think of the powerful Paladin cards. They all seem odd to me with... the new 1-mana weapon that deals 5 damage to you. But whatever, we'll worry about that when Rastakhan's Rumble comes out.
2 days?
Yeah, exactly. If it gets a couple new cards, I think it could be a very, very powerful deck. I think what makes even Paladin a viable tournament deck is where it's situated in the meta. It's found the hole in the armor of a lot of the other decks, and is just, really finding its strong point against a lot of druids and even warlocks, I would say.
We have had it confirmed. Dawido has just gone for a very quick restroom break. These Hearthstone players, maybe very good Hearthstone players, but they are still human.
They still have bladders. Remember that at home, people.
And remember, those of you watching at home, you should visit the restroom sometimes. As well to become a Hearthstone pro.
My name's Derek Brown, and I approve this message. Yeah, like you said, this one final match between these 2 players, because not only is it important to make sure you're at your peak ability in terms of making sure you have nothing distracting you, you also need to make sure that you have the mental fortitude to see it through. A lot of players, especially the newer players, which is not either of these 2 competitors, struggle with being on the big stage. You always hear first-time DreamHack competitors saying how surprising it is, how much worse you tend to play when you are on stage than when you are playing at home.
Yeah. But these guys, they're both quite used to it by now. I would say. Being up on the big stage, the DreamHack stream. There's a lot of little difficulties It's okay. There's a lot of difficulties as well that you may not realize when playing back home, like having the white noise blasted in your ears when you're playing Hearthstone. That can be quite distracting, and that's something that players have to do at almost every tournament that they compete in.
Yeah.
So they can't hear us.
Well, exactly. That would be way too unfair of an advantage if they could hear the plays that we were suggesting, because then if they take them, they lose all their games. It just, it's really not fair to the players if they can hear us. As here we go. We get a look at the starting hands. This is the match for both of these players. Win and go through to the semi-finals of DreamHack Winter. Lose and they are eliminated. All that work in the Swiss pales in comparison to this one all-important game.
So Faeli's Paladin tops out with the Lich King, not running Tyrion, which we have seen a few times over the weekend. We've not seen any Dynasize, which I've been quite disappointed about.
We haven't seen any Dynasize. I feel like Dynasize might be a little bit of a relic of the past from when it was a more aggressive deck.
Yeah.
Because back in the day with Call to Arms, it was very often playing 2 Avenging Wraths and a Dynasize just to get that little bit of damage eked over the finish line. As Dawido has got himself a real nice starting hand here. The Candle Shot, the Egg, and the Flanking Strike. The one question mark I have with this mulligan is I really wouldn't have hated the keep of Spider Bomb, actually. I find that if you can get over the first hump of 2-drop minions, Spider Bomb can be really nice to fight back against Corpse Taker, a Blessing of Kings to minion, especially if you find yourself at play dead.
Well, I was just about to start talking about how powerful Corpse Taker is, and that there's the possibility that Dawido can't deal with it because the Candle Shot gets oozed. But yeah, there's the Wind Fury Harpy, so this Corpse Taker is not going to have Wind Fury anymore. Still Divine Shield and Taunt, that's okay.
Yeah.
But the really powerful thing that this card does is it gets Wind Fury, you buff it with Blessing of Kings, and you smack the opponent in the face for 14.
And that is exactly what Faeli wants to do. I think he will realize that usually the Hunter scales a little bit better into the late game because they have power spikes in the form of Rexar and Katharina in particular, as well as, Cube Playdead combos. Whereas Paladin, like you said, it's more of a fair deck. It just curves out, it plays buffs, which are fairly powerful, but not any disgusting combos that it can get rolling like the Hunter.
You love to see that, don't you? Just when you're playing a ladder, generally, you love to see that. Your opponent roping all the way, and then hero power at the last second.
Well, no, that never happens to me, because what would have happened is the rope would have been 1 millimeter away from burning up, and then Keleseth would have hit the board from my opponent, followed by a swift greetings.
Reporting on duty.
But it was an interesting play from Dawido, because the mind control tech, I find, rarely gets value in this matchup, despite the fact that you're summoning a 1/1 a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Faeli, I think, can quite easily play around the mind control tech. And even if mind control tech does end up getting the 4 necessary minions to steal one, they're usually half of the time just 1/1s. So I wouldn't, if it didn't mess with his curve too much, I wouldn't have hated the mind control tech just being played. But the fact that it uses up the coin, which is obviously a very powerful tool in this matchup, is what I would not have liked about it.
Yes. Dawido now has another complicated turn, though. Never mind, he's not finding it complicated at all. He's just going to make it 5/5.
Eggs.
This actually works out very nicely, because regardless of what Faeli plays next turn, including Corpse Taker, it can be dealt with by the Flanking Strike with a trade. I guess True Silver Champion is one of the key things Faeli's going to be looking at now. Maybe the Spellbreaker to get rid of that Death Rattle.
That's true. Spellbreaker trade. There's not all too much that you're looking at Spellbreakering, because usually when Dawido goes for a cube, he will be playdeading it at the same time, or he will be cubing an egg, in which case he's already got the value of the 5/5 instantly. So I wouldn't hate going for the Spellbreaker here. It does just mean that 5/5 starts to run away, and I think, again, as always with the way that your opponent sequences out their egg plays, you can start to make reads as Faeli. If there was a Terror Scale in hand, would Dawido ever have not gone coin egg into Terror Scale? I think you can probably make the read there for Faeli that there isn't a Terror Scale in hand. It might be a little bit more complicated than that, because Dawido did go right to the rope, so he was clearly considering his turn 2 option. But I think you can make the read that there's not another Death Rattle activator here.
Yep.
And I think Faeli has come to the same conclusion.
In which case, this is much better.
Yes.
It's also banking the mana for next turn, or banking the damage, I guess.
Right.
Next turn, Faeli can spend all of his mana crystals and still get a swing at the True Silver. Next turn, he could silence the egg and swing in the True Silver, or trade in the Ooze
Why not?
if he wants to. Or just play the Corpse Taker, or do any number of things.
Oh, it so nearly works out so well for Faeli. If he just hadn't drawn that blooming Wind Fury Harpy, it would have curved out perfectly into... He gets Flanking Strike this turn. He kills it off with the weapon. He plays Corpse Taker. Dawido plays something. You don't really care what. Probably a Grizzly. And then you go for the Spike Bridge Steed, and you just dominate that game.
And it looks like that sequence of events is going to happen almost exactly as you described, except for the Wind Fury on the Corpse Taker. Oh, not actually. He's Faeli gonna put a stop to that egg while he's got the chance.
Curving into the cube play.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do actually wonder if the Wind Fury Harpy hadn't been drawn, if the Corpse Taker line would have been taken, because then your opponent has a 5/5 and you say, well done, mate, I'm smacking you in the face for 10 damage on this turn.
Well, now he can do the next best thing. He can curve into Wind Fury Harpy itself and Spike Ridge Steed that. Or he would be able to, if not for Ziliax being a phenomenal draw this turn. It's just like an extra flanking strike that heals you.
Yeah, I like the Ziliax. I was considering, again, the Witchwood Grizzly, but Spike Ridge Steed messes up the damage, the amount of damage that you need to be dealing to that Spellbreaker in order to kill it. So the immediate getting rid of it is probably the way to go. And this has just been for both players. Neither side has been able to do what their deck wants to do.
Yeah.
It's just been denial, denial, denial the whole way through.
As we can see, Wind Fury Harpy would have actually worked out that turn, as Dawido doesn't have a direct answer to it, and then that would have been able to be hit by Spike Ridge Steed, buffed up, dealing 12 damage a turn. But Faeli, not knowing that, he's gone with the safest play, which is just removing the Ziliax, leaving himself with a Silverhand Recruit. It's now 3-4.
Yeah, this has, I think, another slightly less obvious benefit of protecting the Wind Fury Harpy by getting a taunt down in front of it. 8 damage a turn from a Wind Fury Harpy.
That's true.
That's still fine. That's a lot of damage.
And it's 2 taunts as well. Obviously, the Stegodon hiding underneath. Or the Stegodon, the Silverhand Recruit is riding.
Yeah,
I should say.
That's the law. And I don't mean LOR.
No, I mean, just gonna
that is the law.
That's the law.
That you have to roleplay when playing Spike Ridge Steed.
It's just odd when you play Spike Ridge Steed on a Stegodon. It's a strange image.
Yeah, it gets a little bit R-rated. And Faeli obviously well justified in taking his time here, because there is, again, the fear of cube playdead on that Grizzly, which is making him wonder if he should go for equality. But then if you extend that argument a little bit further, if they do go for that play of cube into playdead, you have the equality consecration to deal with those Grizzlies afterwards anyway.
Reporting for duty.
And it doesn't work out perfectly, because then there's a cube that you have to kill first somehow. But I think he would have the ability to do so with the minions that he has on board. So I think this is a good way to go about it for Faeli. He, even in the worst case scenario of cube playdead, has strong counterplay.
Quality Consecration, tools that I think are only going to get more powerful once Rastakan's Rumble releases.
I've heard some wildly differing opinions on how good, like, heal Paladin is going to be.
Yeah.
With some people saying it will be like more mid-rangey, some people saying it will be a super control combo OTK deck, maybe with the Death Knight thrown in there. I hope to see it come back. I miss control Paladin.
This is a really awkward turn for Dawido.
Yeah, if he only just had one more attack, I think he could probably fairly happily trade in and Mossy Horror to deal with the Stegodon. But instead he sets up a preemptive cube to try and get a Death Rattle activator on the following turns, or just do what cube was kind of supposed to do in eventually die and give you 2 minions. It's kind of stupid to think of cube as just what it says on the card. rather than the combos that go with it.
Yeah, poor thing. As now, this equality consecration must be tempting, as Faeli can just break that cube open, deal with the Grizzlies, and leave Dawido wide open. The Wind Fury Harpy will survive the turn. Yes, it will only have 1 health, but unless Deathstalker Rexar's drawn, that doesn't matter.
I wonder, though, actually, because obviously the power of Equality Consecrate is it kills everything. No matter how many minions they have, you destroy all of them. And because of that, Katharina could very well come down next turn. Charged Devilsaur could come down next turn.
True.
I think Faeli can be greedier here. You can just develop minions and go for the clear next turn.
The only problem I have with that is that if he does play dead this cube, the Witchwood Grizzlies would protect the cube, and therefore Faeli wouldn't be able to break the cube open before Equality Consecration. So, or Equality Avenging Wrath. Like, it doesn't matter.
No, you're right. I was completely overlooking that fact. I guess because that's probably worth going for it here. But again, it's a difficult decision. And if Katharina does come down here, Faeli's just in a rough spot.
Oh, there's the reward, I guess, for Faeli.
Wow, well played to him. That is a good spot.
Dawido is pretty much stuck just playing the second Witchwood Grizzly here. No way of dealing with that Wind Fury Harpy. That's a disaster. Who knew that Wind Fury Harpy was such a strong card?
It's not. I refuse. You have been stopped.
Nor's Murloc Raider, but...
Fair point.
It's found its way somehow.
Into a tier 3 deck that no one plays. Yeah, the plays here still here somewhat awkward for Dawido. Like you pointed out, Mossy Horror probably doesn't get that much better, but it's not that good. Devilsaur sucks because of the 2-1, and I don't know, maybe Wind Fury Harpy is just good. It's going to get in for a lot of damage here. Dawido just does not know what to do.
A little nod of acknowledgement from Faeli there, thinking to himself, yep, I made the correct play last turn. That Grizzly does protect Dawido quite a bit now, though, as that Harpy can't really do anything. Can't take advantage of the Wind Fury anyway. If a Blessing of Kings was picked up at any time in the last few turns, this game probably would be over by now.
I agree.
Let me think.
And it does mean that you can't even kill it off and play the Lich King on the same turn. It would have to be Consecration for a full board clear, which is worth considering.
And
you can go for a Consecration, clear off everything.
I think it's good. But Faeli is somehow back in that spot again where if Katharina gets played, he's in trouble.
He's not somehow back in that spot again. That spot is called Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft. If your opponent plays Katharina, you are in trouble. I suppose it's just called Hearthstone now, but I like saying Heroes of Warcraft when I'm memeing.
That being said, Dawido is out of beasts. Both Grizzlies have been played. They are the other 2 beasts now present in the hand.
Okay, he has passed that point. He's surpassed Hearthstone, where Katharina is no longer a threat.
He's surpassed the Heroes of Warcraft. Now it's just Hearthstone.
Yeah, okay. And credit to Faeli. If he'd gone for the play of just Lich King last turn instead of for the Consecration clear, man, would King Crush be better on this turn. Just destroy the whole board for Faeli. The Grizzly would still be able to trade in these minions on the board. It's worked out really nicely for him.
That Divine Shield on that Corpse Taker. Oh, it's doing some serious work this turn.
Quickly.
And again, I can understand Dawido's hesitance here. None of his cards do anything.
But he just has to play something.
Yeah, you just play the best thing you can, I suppose.
Does he even hit in? Yeah, wow. Just bouncing off of that Divine Shield. Pirate Paladin. It's now awkward on the other side, though. Because Faeli can't just develop the Lich King. King Crush finishes it off. Just trades straight into it. Faeli's 1 damage short of being able to deal with the King Crush.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to end up going for the play of Gen plus Saronite Chain Gang, but that does leave him very weak to a mind control tech, which I imagine he's been consciously playing around for this whole game. But by diluting the board to more than 4 minions, trying to go even wider, it does make it a little bit easier for him to flood the board, I suppose.
Reporting for duty.
Okay, I guess this does a similar job actually, but puts more bad minions on the board for the mind control tech to steal if he was afraid of that punish. Less taunts will be put in his way. Another cube picked up, but because of Dawido's choice to play the Terrascale Stalker early on, which he did not have to do, it's worth saying.
Yeah. The
this King Crush
sequencing
cannot be copied.
Sequencing is so awkward. I mean, he can trade the King Crush into the Corpse Taker and then cube it, and it might do some work later on.
I reckon Oof. I wonder if he just goes Mind Control Tech first, then Mossy Horror.
Okay.
Just to give him the highest chance of stealing a good minion that doesn't die to the old Mossy.
Depending on what gets stolen, I guess.
I mean, if he gets Gen, he's miles in the lead.
If he gets Gen, he can just cube the King Crush and then...
So then does he trade in first to give him the highest chance of stealing exactly Gen? Or does he say stealing the Corpse Taker is good enough?
I think stealing the Corpse Taker would be worth it.
Yeah.
And I prefer a 2 and 5 to a 1 and 4. So let's see.
Not the guy he was looking for, and it does mean that Faeli feels like he's still in this game. Hands together in what looked like a silent prayer here for Faeli. He knows he just needs that little dollop of help to get through to the top 4, the semi-finals of DreamHack, but it is just slowly slipping away from him.
The Lich King is quite capable of providing Faeli with that dollop of help. The problem is that charged Devilsaur, and again, that cube in hand means Dawido isn't even close to being out of resources yet, but Faeli very much is close to being out of resources.
And this is what happens, I have to admit, so rarely in Hearthstone nowadays, of 2 decks that don't have much card draw and are not particularly aggressive, just ending up in a pretty mediocre late game, where they're just trying to top deck each other, trying to get that little scraping bit of advantage to close out the game. It's so rare to see states like this in Hearthstone anymore, where most tier 1 decks either draw a million cards like Evenlock, Shudderwock, or any kind of Druid deck, or they're aggro decks that would have already finished the game by now.
I feel like I've not seen Valanir once in this tournament. I've seen so much even Paladin, at least in the games that I've cast. Valanir just hasn't been a thing.
I haven't seen Valanir be good that much. I've seen it a couple of times, but it's usually ended up being silenced or bounced back to hand or some other nonsense along the way. As this play from Faeli to value trade with the Gen Greymane, when I have to admit I was first of all looking at just trading it straight up into the King Crush. It's worked out beautifully. He gets to have the amazing trade up, it looks like here, of Saronite Chain Gang into the King Crush, which puts him in a pretty good spot. But still, Dawido's play of the Charged Devilsaur seems to put him in a beneficial position. And if Dawido finds Play Dead on the next turn, or Terrascale Stalker, whatever Death Rattle activator he has left in the deck, and could throw it onto the Charged Devilsaur, that's the game.
If Faeli can find any spell, he can trade away this whole board. Blessing of Kings does allow that, but I don't know if he wants to.
Kills off the Mossy. He could buff up the recruit.
The 1/1 and trade that
in.
Devilsaur, then the Pyromancer survives. He can then also hero power.
Does he want to trade though? Does he want to try and start closing out the game by going face?
I don't think he's in a safe enough position where he's not getting away with that. He's going to go with King Crush instead. Sorry, the Lich King instead. Which Devilsaur is 1 damage off killing. We seem to be in this position consistently throughout this game, where one of the players is just 1 or 2 damage short of dealing with the other player's threat.
If he could get Rexar, though, he would be able to swing this board back. He gets the tracking instead.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Hunter's Mark. That is a tool.
Is that good enough, though? It's 1 mana, do 1 damage. He still has to trade in the Devilsaur into the Lich King. Look at Faeli. He is just praying that there is no Rexar here.
Well, he must know by now it's not there. It would have been picked already.
He's not even looking. He can't watch. This is how tense it is for these players. The Hunter's Mark, that is the saddest Hunter's Mark I think I've ever seen.
Obviously, Dawido's other option is to go Spider Bomb Cube in
and
his
just
hand.
hope to hit the 1 out of 3.
If he does hit the Lich King...
Maybe he just does that first. He has the mana for everything.
Right, he can always Hunter's Mark afterwards to make the trade, so he may as well take that 1 and 3. He's going for it.
He's going for it. You're going to need to pray once again here, Faeli.
That's a miss! However, Dawido still has board control. He has Spider Bombs.
But he's 1 damage off lethal. That's it. That's the game for
My
Faeli.
goodness! One of the most stressful games of Hearthstone that I've ever seen in my life, as Faeli breathes the biggest sigh of relief he will be going through to the semi-finals. Cora, what did you make of that?
He couldn't even look at what was happening in the game. If that was Rexar, the game was over. But the tracking fails, and Dawido unable to close it out. What a tense final game in the series there. That was so close.
My heart is beating right now. I can't even imagine.
I would hope it is,
what it
otherwise
must be
you'd
like
be dead.
To be one of these players.
True. I honestly thought we were going to have to get someone to go and check up on Faeli for a moment there.
No, he's looking a lot happier right now, but very well played on both sides. The Even Paladin was able to get it there right at the end. Faeli's decision not to use the Lich King earlier and to instead save it for post Mossy Horror and post Mind Control tech played out very well, but it was just, again, unfortunate for Dawido that he wasn't able to find Katharina earlier or Deathstalker Rexar. Either of those tools with a beast still in the deck, of course, would have given him a really, really solid position in that game that Faeli likely just wouldn't have been able to deal with. But it's really unusual, like you guys were saying, that we have this instance in Hearthstone where it's 2 mid-rangey decks who don't draw a lot of cards and who just kind of fizzle there in the mid-game. It just doesn't happen much anymore.
I want to point out that it wasn't just the Hunter that didn't draw the key cards. I mean, Faeli, he drew Wind Fury Harpy before he had the chance to play Corpse Taker. That was bad for him. He didn't draw the Valanir. That was bad for him. So it wasn't necessarily a one-sided game in terms of one player got luckier than the other one. We definitely saw a lot of skill from Faeli that game. I mean, you were consistently pointing out, well, that was a good call. That was a good call. That was well played by Faeli for this reason. It's just well played.
And I think the one big decision in that last game that I question from Dawido was when, his plays were all very mediocre. He was just playing out cards in the late stages of the game, and he played the Terrascale Stalker. That was just a 3-3, which got easily cleared up by the Consecration and just a 1-1 recruit. And then he drew the cube a couple of turns later. Imagine if he could have gone cube into tracker.
That's what I was thinking at that point. How good is the Mind Control tech really going to be that you want to give away the opportunity to draw into the Carnivorous Cube and really capitalize on that? I think that was a bit of a misplay there from Dawido, and if he'd held onto the Terror Scale, obviously we saw the MCT only stole a recruit that he was then forced to Mossy Horror away anyway. So having kept that Terror Scale Stalker might have changed the game for him and might have ended up with him taking the win there, but it is going to be Faeli moving on to the semifinal. He did finish in the semifinals at DreamHack Summer of this year, but potentially this time he can make it even further. He's going to be playing against the winner of Tyler versus Burrow, which is our next and final quarterfinal match. So don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be finding out who is Faeli's semifinal opponent here at DreamHack Winter.